She sits like she owns the air. Fingers hook the table's edge, nails immaculate, posture unbothered, calm the way a shut door is calm. No face, just the language of hands that don't fidget. Her breath evens, a private mantra, not quite words. Hold. Don't flinch. Walk out. 2 empty chairs in the front row wear black ribbons that refuse to lie flat. One for Jordan Hale, 21. One for Sienna Park, 20. Around those vacancies, grief won't behave. Mr. Hale's tie is on backward. Mrs. Park's tissue shreds in her hand. A phone in the second row blurts a cheery ringtone, then dies in guilty silence. The small black drive is palmed to the clerk. The projector clears its throat. A hush folds the room. Before anything plays, ADA Claire Mendoza leans toward a junior investigator and says, "Not for drama, but because it's true. People tell stories. Machines keep time." The line hangs there like a low light over water. Kira Monroe's knuckles relax a fraction. Somewhere inside, she tastes the finish line. Truth doesn't tremble. It waits. And tonight it waits on a small black drive. Riverton measures weather by sound. Rail on steel, river under bridge, tires combing wet concrete. The interstate leans into the North Viaduct, a long, compliant curve toward a concrete pillar that never compromises. Speed limit signs preach in lowercase. Kira Monroe is 17 and gravity in sneakers. Rooms tilt toward her, plans orbit. When she texts, people change routes. When she laughs, rules loosen. Jordan Hale lives inside that field. Front seat loyalist, woodshop palms, the boy who learned her rhythms and mistook them for music. Sienna Park moves there too. A gentler moon, silver bracelet, quiet witness, the one who smooths edges after sparks. Around Kira, their choices calibrate. Jordan yields until he doesn't. Sienna observes and keeps score in a heart that doesn't like to. Some nights, the triangle hums. Some nights, it hisses. A security camera 2 blocks from the bridge watches their coupe idle in a lot cut from warehouse shadow. Not rehearsal, just a pause that feels like thinking. Kira's phone glows with a life that edits consequences. A racing flag sticker winks near the lens. Jordan's key fob, Hale and Son, knocks his knee in a nervous metronome. Sienna thumbs the torn line of a concert ticket that never got to tear. 3 orbits, 1 center. The car slips out. Headlights stitch toward the viaduct. Kira drives. Jordan rides shotgun. Sienna sits behind. The impact that waits ahead will divide a single night into before and after with surgical neatness, then ignore mercy. Back in court, a desk microphone pops to life. A clerk stands, papers squared, voice steady. State of Illinois versus Kira Monroe. The room tightens. Judge Price receives a signed waiver slid up on blue-backed cardstock. His nod is small, sufficient. He doesn't sermonize. He adjusts his glasses. The law inhales. ADA Claire Mendoza doesn't grandstand. She lays a map on an easel. Riverside Approach, the feeder lane, the pillar stamped with a municipal stencil. 3 occupants, she says, voice clean as a scalpel. Driver, Monroe. Front passenger, Hale. Rear, Park. 2 fatalities at scene. 1 survivor with minor injury. The state will show movement, orientation, and an absence of braking in the seconds preceding impact. She doesn't look at Kira. She looks at the machine. Defense counsel Ethan Cho aligns 3 color tabs on a legal pad until the edges kiss. Ritual, not theater. We'll address intent and how recordings get read, he says. Weather explains speed. Youth explains panic. He promises friction, not miracles. The projector warms. Claire leans close to the black drive as if speaking to a witness who hates small talk and whispers. Not for the room, but for the record that isn't human. All right, keep time. The screen blooms. Sodium night, the feeder lane, the bend beginning to gather them in. The river holds its vertebrae of light and pretends not to watch. The screen opens on rain and road. Sodium lights breathe from red to amber. Water bands the asphalt in narrow rivers. A time stamp hangs in the corner, steady as a wristwatch no one can argue with. The silver coupe glides into view. Wipers tick. Through the glass, three shapes hold a moving conversation with the weather. In the Hale row, Mr. Hale leans forward without meaning to, as if closing the distance could change the frame. Mrs. Park presses her thumb into the soft metal of a moon charm, keeping time with the sweep of each blade. The camera hands the scene to another mounted farther along the route. The approach to the North Viaduct grows larger. Curve, guardrail, the blunt certainty of a concrete pillar. ADA Claire Mendoza feels the room tighten around that shape. Expectation lives in bodies before it lives in words. Judge Price notes the way the HVAC hum becomes audible when people forget to breathe. A cursor taps. The picture steps backward. The parking lot. 90 minutes prior. Warehouse shadows. A rectangle of light under an awning. The coupe idles, headlights pulsing like a slow heartbeat. Rain pebbles the bonnet. No dialogue, just the engine's patient insistence and the thin white stamp in the corner. Time stamp. Row 5714. Kira's phone glows pale in the driver's window, a square of moving color. Jordan's key fob drops against his knee once, twice. In the rear, a hand. Sienna's turns a bracelet until the charm faces inward. The moment lasts long enough to register as choice. Then the car noses out, tires combing water into neat lines, and the camera keeps the secret it cannot read. The picture moves to a cross street. Time stamp. 01-12-33. A drive-through window, a bag passed across a sill, the soft choreography of normal night. Laughter exists here, visible in shoulders and angles of heads. No one in the courtroom smiles. Mr. Hale's jaw loosens and tightens, astonishment at how recent before can be. A service station canopy, timestamp, 01-2409. Jordan stretches while the pump ticks. Kira stays behind glass, eyes lowered to a scroll. Sienna adjusts the strap of her coat, then pockets a folded ticket, the perforation unbroken. A cashier glances out and looks away. Nothing asks for an exclamation point. Nothing waves a red flag. The ordinariness needs no narrator. It argues for itself. Back to Riverside. 28 minutes prior. The coupe turns onto the Riverside road that feeds the viaduct. Street cameras trade the car between them like a file passed on a long desk. Speed builds in small increments, the confident kind that comes from familiarity. In the first row, Mrs. Park's fingers stop moving. Claire watches the pixelated reflections in the wet lane markings and thinks, not for the record, but for herself. Keep your eye on the pattern. Intersection before the ramp, 7 minutes prior. The rain thickens. Headlights braid into white ropes across the frame. The car signals, waits a beat, then takes the feeder lane. A street sign flashes past at the edge, speed limit 45. The number looks polite, the weather does not. Riverton. Side lot. 5 minutes prior. A different angle catches the coupe easing briefly into a slip of curb cut, just the nose in, the pause of a driver measuring distance to a fixed point. 1 breath, 2, then motion again. In the gallery, a friend of Kira's drops a knee against the bench, an involuntary knock that draws no rebuke, but earns a glance from the bailiff. Ethan Cho writes 2 words, brief dwell, without underlining them. Riverside approach. Real time. The screen shows rain sheeting flat, wipers sweep, tires cast fans of spray. The road under the overpass is darker, not metaphor, but physics. Less sky, more shadow. The pillar enters from the edge and settles into the frame, as if it has been waiting all night for its mark. Mr. Hale lifts his forearms from his knees and clasps his hands together, a carpenter making a brace from bone. No commentary. The picture offers what it has. A side camera picks up the coupe's angle as it takes the bend. There is nothing sloppy about the line. No fishtail, no hard correction, no flicker that promises a change of mind. Claire feels a pinprick rise along her arms, the body's way of counting seconds it will later quote. The editor advances one more notch, not to violence, but to the last intact breath. Freeze. 0.8 seconds to contact. 3 profiles fixed by rain light. Jordan's chin tipped a degree toward the driver, a syllable about to leave his mouth and never make sound. Sienna's shoulder set against the seat, head forward, a listener even now. Kira's posture upright, hands level, no visible dive of the nose, no red bloom of brake. The pillar holds the center like an unblinking eye. The room holds with it. Someone in the back exhales too loudly and apologizes under breath. Judge Price doesn't look away from the screen. He waits for the undertow in the gallery to settle. He has tried cases with more noise and less consequence. The reverse feels worse. The frame stays frozen long enough to make a choice of its own, to ask without words. Was there fear? Was there certainty? Different muscles answer in different bodies. Mr. Hale's grip hardens. Mrs. Park's bracelet leaves a faint crescent in her palm. Claire keeps her gaze on the corner where the timestamp lives. 2:27:49, anchoring to the only thing that cannot be argued. When the picture resumes, it will move quickly. Everyone understands that, even those who have never watched a machine testify. Ethan leans back a fraction, composing his face into the plain mask a court prefers. He is not counting frames. He is measuring the juryless audience of one. But that is the next beat. This one belongs to stillness. No voice tells the room what to feel. The evidence does not need help. The rain in the speakers clicks like a metronome set to human panic, and the pillar remains what pillars are. A reason the bridge is still there in the morning. Hold. A breath. Another. Permission to continue is implicit, but the screen waits anyway, like a witness who will not speak until the question is asked exactly right. The courtroom lights dim just enough that faces soften into silhouettes, and the screen becomes the only thing that breathes. A new file opens. No rain this time, no headlights, only data. Jagged lines, numbers stacked like quiet accusations, a pulse in code. Dr. Alan Mercer steps forward, shirt crisp, glasses low, voice tuned to decimals. Before he speaks, he nudges his pen parallel to the edge of the witness rail, a habit so precise it borders on ritual, the kind of man who straightens a world 1 millimeter at a time. Your Honor, he begins, this is the event data recorder readout from the defendant's vehicle. The graph appears, a rising slope, angled like ambition, then a cliff. This line represents speed 5 seconds before impact. The cursor traces the climb, 82, 94, 106, 110 miles per hour. A murmur tries to form in the gallery and dies mid-throat. Even the hum of the projector seems unsure whether to continue. Something in the Hale row shifts. Mr. Hale's hand searches for his wife's, fingers closing like clamps around memory. Dr. Mercer taps another point. Throttle position averaged 85%, full depression at the final second. He doesn't embellish. The graph already does. Brake switch remains inactive. No blip, no spike, no attempt. The screen highlights a flat line where braking should live. It looks eerie, Not like absence, but like refusal. Claire keeps her eyes forward, but her jaw settles. Aware the room is translating numbers into pictures whether it wants to or not. Ethan Cho rises. He straightens his tie with one thumb, not affectation, habit, and approaches with calm that borders on defiance. "Doctor," he says, "this system records milliseconds. If my client panicked or hydroplaned, are you saying there is zero chance her foot left the accelerator too quickly to register?" Mercer's answer comes like rainfall measured in exact drops. "Panic might reduce pressure, but the data does not indicate release. The throttle increased before impact. It did not ease." He gestures at the final climb. Hydroplaning does not produce sustained acceleration. Judge Price watches the line without blinking. In his mind, not the crash, but the decision to keep going. Apparent once, long ago, time makes those instincts sharper, not duller. Still, he offers no expression. A bench trial is a scalpel, not a stage. Chain of custody certification flashes on screen. Paper trail, signatures, timestamps. The clean, bureaucratic skeleton that keeps evidence honest. Claire offers each exhibit with steady hands like someone setting stones into a river for others to cross. Logged the night of the collision, sealed, forensically imaged, no breaks in the chain. Accepted, Judge Price confirms. His voice doesn't lift or drop. It simply becomes law. The room feels smaller now, as if the numbers on the screen have eaten space and left only consequence. Jordan's sister, shoulders tight, mouth a thin line, tucks her hands beneath her thighs, grounding herself. Sienna's father wipes his glasses with the corner of his sleeve, even though there is nothing on them. Clarity is ritual as much as sight. Dr. Mercer continues. Impact velocity consistent with 110 miles per hour. The absence of brake activation in the final seconds indicates a beat, not hesitation. Precision. No recorded attempt to slow. Claire does not look at Kira. She looks at the screen the way a surgeon looks at a monitor during a heartbeat irregularity, searching for the moment life could have been diverted. Ethan returns to his table, unbuttons his jacket quietly, as if loosening a single thread could buy him a different universe. The graph freezes at its highest peak. That number, 110, stands like a monument carved in neon ice. The line cuts upward, then drops into nothingness, a cliff cut straight through time. The courtroom waits for Dr. Mercer to speak again. He doesn't. He lowers the pointer, steps back. Noise shrinks, like oxygen thinning before stormlight breaks. Mrs. Park presses the moon charm so hard the edge leaves a crescent in her palm. Mr. Hale's breath escapes as a rough whisper, not grief exactly, but realization. Finding a body. Even Kira, polished calm, wrapped tight like satin, shifts one wrist, that half-second twist as if testing an invisible cuff. Then a quick flick of her eyes toward her lawyer. It is fast, almost beautiful in its control. But it's there. A need. A crack. A girl checking the script she thought would save her. Judge Price inhales slowly. A man accustomed to tragedy wearing a robe that demands distance. On another day, he would adjust his glasses. Today, he doesn't. The gravity speaks without gesture. A soft sound. Projector fans slowing. Room tightening. And then silence hits harder than any number ever could. Silence like a hand closing a door. Then the judge's voice. Continue. We'll see the synchronized layers. Not request, directive. A road opening only forward. And before the next file opens, before the next second of the night replays itself into thousands of breaths, the video stalls just long enough for the wait to settle. in ribs, in benches, in the parts of people that rewrite themselves when truth refuses to move. A trial asks one question: what happened? But the truth asks another: were you there to see it? Don't just watch, witness. Stay with us. Some cases hinge on a single second. This one leans on a pattern. Kira Monroe arrives first as paperwork, honor roll, captaincies, a guidance note that reads high initiative, persuasive. Her public feeds add color, curated nights of polished chrome and soft neon. In a vacuum, it reads as confidence. In this room, it looks like forward momentum that forgot the break exists. Witnesses don't sing in unison. Their differences make the picture sharper. A track teammate, precise as a stopwatch. If coach said 58, she brought 58. She liked the clock, and the clock liked her. A barista from the Riverside Cafe, easy drawl. She tapped the counter when the line crawled, and smile like that made it move. Never rude, just in charge. A neighbor 2 doors down, plain spoken. 17 going on 30. Kids adjusted around her. Most didn't notice they were doing it. No one says dangerous. All of them say center. Files on Jordan Hale sketch a steadier shape. Work orders from Hale and Son Woodworks. A photo of a shelf he built, leveled to the bubble. Receipts for sandpaper and glue. A voicemail to a client, apologizing for a delay in a voice that knows patience. In family photos, he's the kind who stands a little left so others fit the frame. Screenshots shown to investigators add the friction. Names blurred, timestamps intact. Running 10 late, not 10. 10 means 10 don't bring her this time call, now prove it. None of those lines would lead a broadcast. Together, they say orbit. Together, they say who sets the time. Friends split on labels, but not on gravity. One says, with a shrug that doesn't hide worry, with her, attention felt like sunlight, warm until you realized you were too close to the star. Another adds, Jordan was good at accommodating. Sometimes that's kindness. Sometimes it's drift. Sienna Park threads softly through the accounts. People call her steady. The bracelet with the half moon shows up in group photos. She's the one who turns a quarrel into a joke, the one who texts both sides so a plan doesn't fall apart. Not a rival, not a third point of drama. She's proof that not everyone near a gravity well wants to spin. There is the night after, too. Paramedic notes, clinical, undecorated, alert, oriented, vital stable, ambulatory with assistance, complains of headache and mild nausea, requests to contact counsel, nothing unlawful there. Timing noted. In follow-up, hospital paperwork shows Kira discharged within days. Contusion, observation, cleared. The absence of severe injury doesn't erase harm. The families in the first row carry that lesson in their bones. Digital traces complicate the surface. Not blueprints. Scatter. General articles about hydroplaning. A forum thread on panic responses after collisions. A Q&A about what details matter in an accident report. One search on brake lock versus hydroplane. Each piece is ordinary. Their cluster makes people in this room do maths they wish they didn't know how to do. So why did Kira expect to go home? Her confidence was a habit built from experience, minor stops that ended in warnings, teachers who called her decisive, not difficult. She had read enough to speak the language of accident, and counsel appeared early to shape her words. Underneath it all was a core belief, easy to feel. Rules are lanes for other cars. The relationship with Jordan sits where warmth meets weight. He adored her, say several accounts, and adoration made compromise a reflex. He changed routes to fit her timing the way people change routes for traffic. Shrug, signal, merge. The texts show small negotiations that learn to call themselves love. When Jordan set a boundary, he often softened it with an apology. When Kira set one, the clock behind it ticked louder. Friends who liked them together now speak in half sentences. The teammate. She anchored a relay. Everyone ran truer, until they ran to keep up. The barista. She liked being first to decide and first to leave. The neighbor. You either stood straighter or stepped back. About Sienna, there is almost no heat. She wasn't a wedge, she was a witness. The bracelet now lives in her father's pocket. He does not pull it out in court. Some objects turn into questions when the air touches them. None of this is chargeable on its own. It is context. It shows a center of gravity and two people in range. It explains how a triangle can balance so long as the center holds, and what happens when speed outgrows distance. After the collision, Kira's calm looks practiced more than dazed. In one hospital corridor image, she focuses faster when a lawyer leans in. Not panic, alignment. Later, leaving the facility, she walks steady, face composed, press ignored. The certainty reads as someone who has rarely been told no and expects the rhythm of the world to return to its usual key. Back at counsel table now, the micro-movements speak. Her wrist makes that tiny test again, as if confirming an absence only she can feel. Then the flick of eyes toward Ethan Cho, brief, precise, seeking assurance that the prepared story still holds. He dips a fraction, not a nod, more a calibration. It is not a scandal to need your lawyer. It is a tell to need your narrative. The state does not declare intent from personality. The defense will not excuse impact with adolescence. The court doesn't grade character. It weighs conduct. But character colors conduct. It's the tint on glass that changes the same sun. One more layer. A guidance note from months earlier, buried in the school file, resurfacing like a pinprick of light. Dislikes ambiguity. In most lives, that line is a compliment. In this one, it hums under a graph that climbed to 110 and never learned the taste of the break. Kira Monroe expected to walk out because she believed outcomes answered a will. The next phases of this trial are what happens when will meets a wall that keeps the city up. Evidence will not flatter her certainty. It will not flatter anyone's. It will tell a shape. The court will decide what that shape means. The trial does not pause for grief. Grief keeps pace. On the evidence cart, a photo waits face down. At Judge Price's nod, Claire turns it over. Happiness enters uninvited. Jordan in his work shirt, Kira's arms around his parents. In that frozen summer, trust had a name. Mrs. Hale presses her lips together so memory will not spill. Mr. Hale tips forward, hands locked, bracing an invisible weight. Across the aisle, the Parks watch without blinking. Their daughter is not in that picture, and absence can feel like a verdict even before anyone speaks. Mr. Park rolls a half-moon bracelet in his pocket, metal against skin, a private metronome. Mrs. Park keeps her eyes on the screen until the colors blur. She lifts her chin and breathes. Claire does not narrate. She returns the photo to its sleeve as though glass might crack from too much air. Next, a planner page from Sienna's desk. Clean boxes, half the months crossed. Beside it, a concert ticket with a perforation never torn. Future tense, intact on paper. Silence settles, but it is not empty. A thin current runs between the Hale and Park rows. A tissue is set on the rail and politely left. Two families acknowledge one another without eye contact, the way strangers learn each other in a waiting room they never meant to share. Claire lifts a clear pouch, fabric cut from a hoodie at the seam, a fleck of sawdust caught in the seam. It should mean nothing. It means everything to one side of the room. Mrs. Hale's breath catches. Mr. Hale stares at the grit as if it could explain a universe. His mouth shapes words the microphones do not catch. Maybe a year. Maybe a nickname. Then the tape returns. Charts and timestamps, the riverside approach, the pillar, the speed that climbed to 110 while the break stayed dark. The Hale photo glows a little harsher in hindsight. How could she? Mrs. Hale whispers, and the question travels, soft as dust, to the Parks row. Mrs. Park does not answer aloud, but her fingers loosen around the planner page as if agreement and disbelief can live in the same hand. Judge Price keeps his eyes level. He moves only once, the smallest shift, when the bracelet and ticket appear together. On his legal pad, he writes a single line, not for the record, but for himself. Justice doesn't shout. It stands beside the empty chairs. Kira has been a statue all morning. When the Hale photo returns to the cart, her shoulders rise a touch. Composure tries to remake itself. Then the small tell, a half-second twist of her wrist, as if testing an absence only she can feel, and a quick glance toward Ethan. Too brief to register as plea, long enough to register as need. Ethan does not touch her. He aligns a pen with the edge of his pad until the plastic sits true. Assurance, translated into millimeters. Between the families, an almost conversation continues in gestures. Mr. Hale smooths a crease on his trousers. 2 beats later, Mr. Park mirrors the motion, finding steadiness where he can. Mrs. Hale leaves the spare tissue on the rail. Mrs. Park does not take it. She flattens it with her palm, a flag she will not wave. For a heartbeat, both women breathe at the same pace. Claire steps back. When she speaks, she keeps the tone clinical by choice. For the record, these items are offered to establish identity and loss. She doesn't look at Kira. She looks at the 2 empty chairs, then at the bench. The court accepts with a small, formal nod. The Parks do what the Hales cannot do yet. They glance briefly toward the other row. Mr. Park's eyes meet Mr. Hale's for half a second. Nothing like forgiveness exactly, something like recognition. Both men look away at the same time, as if taught by the same father that dignity is built from restraint. Mrs. Park finally lifts the tissue. Mrs. Hale stares forward, at nothing, at everything. The breath they shared a moment ago falls out of sync. Kira looks up once more, toward the Parks now, then away. Not defiance, not confession. Something thinner. Acceptance that there are rooms she cannot arrange. Judge Price speaks, voice tempered to the weight in front of him. The court recognizes the family's presence. No flourish. The acknowledgement lands like a hand set gently on a table that has been shaking. For the Hales, it permits an exhale. For the Parks, it proves their daughter will not be reduced to a docket number. From the second row, a friend of Jordan's blinks hard and fails once. He hides it badly. No one corrects him. Dignity here is not the absence of tears. It is the absence of spectacle. Claire closes the binder with care. The cart wheels away. The ribbons on the 2 empty chairs do not move, and still they seem to pull at the air. No verdict has been read. No sentence has been weighed. Yet the room has already measured something, how heavy absence is and how long it can sit without making a sound. The oath is short until it has to live inside your chest. Kira raises her hand, repeats the words, lowers it, and laces her fingers on the rail as if stillness could be a defense. Ethan Cho keeps his voice low, a tone made for glass. Kira, what do you remember? Rain, she says. Noise. I panicked. Breaking? I don't remember breaking. Did you mean to harm anyone? Never. How old are you? 17. Sleep? Stress? Exams? Fights? I was tired. I froze. Hydroplaning? It felt like sliding. He doesn't push her into speeches. He builds a small, careful scaffold. Are you a trained performance driver? No. Have you sought therapy since? Yes. Why? So, I don't fall apart. I see it every night. A quiet moves through the gallery. Ethan lets it sit, then nods once. Nothing further at this stage. Claire Mendoza stands. Binder open to a tab the color of wet asphalt. She matches breath to fact. Ms. Monroe, time. At Aero 2, 2650, your car enters the Riverside feeder. Disputed? No. O2, 2712, acceleration past 90? No. O2, 2740, 110. Brake switch inactive. She swallows. I can't dispute what it shows. Claire keeps her tone even. Inside, the metronome starts. She says panicked. The recorder remembers pressure. Earlier you used the word sliding. The data shows increasing throttle in the final second. Can sliding explain that? I was scared, Kira says. I don't know what my foot did. She says, afraid. The recorder remembers full. Were you in a parking area 2 blocks from the bridge that night? For a minute. Doing what? Waiting. For whom? Jordan. We were meeting friends. No friends appear in the footage. 5 minutes before impact, you paused again near the viaduct entrance. Why? Rain. Visibility. Phone use during either pause? I don't remember. She says she doesn't remember. The time stamps remember where headlights lingered. Claire turns a page. Were you arguing with Jordan that evening? We were tense. About what? Time. Plans. Did you tell him 10 means 10? Yes. Did you ask him not to bring Sienna? I didn't want complications. Complications. A third seat filled. Kira, in the final 2 seconds, did you apply the brake? I don't remember. The recorder shows no activation. I can't change numbers. No. Claire lets breath find its level. In the weeks before, you read about crashes, hydroplaning, panic responses. You saw a page about what people say after collisions. Everyone sees those, Kira answers. It was general. She says general. The search times remember when. Claire closes the loop. At Oro 2, 2749, the pillar centers your lane. 1 breath before impact. No brake, maximum throttle. Is there anything you can tell this court that reconciles your account with that record? A long look at the far wall. I wish I could. She wishes. The tape does not. Nothing further, Claire says, and sits. Redirect. Ethan returns, not grand, just present. Kira, 2 questions first. If your throttle increased, could fear have made you press harder by mistake? It could have, she says. I was locked up. Second, would choosing that pillar ever equal love for Jordan? No, she says, voice raw for the first time. No. He leaves it there. A defense cannot out-talk a graph. It can only ask a judge to put a human beside it. For a moment, the courtroom practices a new silence. Claire feels it gather in the ribs and settle. She takes stock the way she always does, in the privacy where resolve is allowed to speak. She says 17. The recorder remembers 110. She says sliding. The recorder remembers steady hands. She says rain. The recorder remembers pauses in dry places. She says she loved him. The recorder remembers the shape of a lane that did not turn. Judge Price folds his hands on the bench, then parts them again, bracing the wood with his palms. His gaze never leaves the screen that waits for the next file. This is a bench trial, he says. This court weighs evidence, not the room. We proceed. The words land with the clean weight of a level against a wall. Straight. Unforgiving. On the front row, Mrs. Hale holds the tissue flat in her palm. Mrs. Bowes Park turns the bracelet once, the half-moon cool against skin. Two families learn how to sit again. Kira's wrist gives that small tell, the half-second twist as if testing an absence no one else can feel. Her eyes flick to Ethan, quick, searching for the script she thinks still fits. He aligns a pen with the edge of his pad until the plastic sits true. Claire closes her binder. She can still hear the metric hum inside her head, the refrain she would never say out loud. She says panic. The tape remembers choice. The court moves on. No one breathes louder than the machine that will speak next. A soft click, the projector's low hum, the faint beep of a timestamp coming alive. "Proceed," Judge Price says. Riverside returns. The feeder lane, sodium light combing the rain. The viaducts rise like a dark shoulder. Kira's car is a moving dot among others. Nothing dramatic yet. Only a trajectory. "Overlay first layer," Claire says. In the corner, a municipal camera 2 blocks back. The earlier approach, a routine turn that wouldn't interest anyone if not for what came after. "Second layer." The EDR readout steps on top of the image, speed marching upward, throttle deep and steady, the brake channel a long, unbroken silence. The room tightens by a degree. "Third layer." A location trace of stops and starts, lot activity near the bridge approach, a brief dwell at the curb cut, movement again. Not live surveillance. Just the stitches you can find when you return to where the night made it seem. The 3 windows breathe together. Dots blink when the camera sees the car, numbers tick in time, the road rolls forward. Claire. These align within 1 second, a small, sufficient nod from the bench. The picture follows the final turn. A short in-lane pause, more breath than stop, then the arc begins. Speed chart, 80, 92, 106, 110. The brake line stays empty. On the defense table, Ethan's finger finds the edge of a legal pad and holds there. In the front row, Mr. Park closes his hand over the half-moon charm. Mr. Hale squares his shoulders, as if bracing a cabinet that cannot be saved. "Freeze," Claire says. The playback halts a breath before contact, then steps into impact. Text flashes in the corner. "Passenger front airbag deploy. Rear compartment intrusion. Severe. Driver airbag deploy." Claire doesn't leave the explanation to the diagram. She lifts the expert's report, one finger marking the excerpt. "For the record, the state summarizes the findings," she says, voice calm, surgical. "The primary strike is off-center, passenger side frontal engagement with the support column. The report explains that off-center collisions drive the load into the front passenger longitudinal path, not symmetrically into the engine cradle. Force travels diagonally through the right side structure, then propagates rearward, compromising the rear passenger space on that same side." She clicks to a cutaway drawing. Colored arrows map the load path across the car. "These areas," she continues, "are engineered crumple zones, designed to deform and absorb energy before it reaches occupants. They worked as designed. Panels collapsed, rails buckled, energy was managed, but the vector still focused on the passenger side. The driver's side received a glancing component. The structure there absorbed and deflected load along a longer path, which reduces intrusion to the driver's compartment." Plain words. No flourish. Physics. She keeps reading, sparing the room the jargon and keeping the teeth. Belt logs confirm front passenger restraint engagement. Airbag timings are consistent with a high-energy off-center strike. Rear seat intrusion is severe along the passenger side sill and quarter. Delta V is catastrophic for the front passenger and rear passenger on that side. Survivable, though serious, for the driver. Claire looks back to the screen. In short, where the car hit is why the outcomes are different. On cue, the vector arrow lands again over the front passenger seat. Kira's throat tightens in a visible swallow. Her thumbnail presses into a pen cap until the plastic dents. Her gaze follows the arrow's sweep, then tips down, away, small. Enough to register, not enough to help. Any anomaly in restraints? Judge Price asks. None, Claire answers. Airbags deployed by design, belts engaged. The structure did what it was built to do. The strike point made the difference. Meaning, nothing failed. Meaning, two families still did not get tomorrow. Resume? Claire says. The synchronized playback runs one last time. Approach, acceleration, absence, and then the stop that has named this entire case. The three layers finish the sentence together. Ethan rises. He does not pace. Pillars get hit, he says. Not every strike is malice. Fear locks bodies. Teens make terrible mistakes. Speed plus rain plus wrong reflex. Reckless is possible without intent. The recorder tells us what happened, not what she understood as it happened. He tips a palm toward the diagram. Engineering explains survival differences without implying design. The court should beware of turning pattern into purpose. He sits. The length is right. A judge can feel when someone starts arguing with gravity. Claire returns to sequence, not emotion. The state does not claim hatred, she says. We account for a line. She highlights the lot, dwell near the bridge. The curbside pause, the climb to 110, the silence where the break should live. Alone, each point is explainable. Together they reduce coincidence. She taps the excerpt again. The expert's explanation does not prove motive. It does explain outcomes. The timing and the choices explain approach. She lets the room look. The diagram speaks. The report underlines. On the bench, Judge Price's face stays level. He has tried cases where noise carried weak claims farther than they deserved. This is not noise. This is a line drawn by three separate hands and a fourth that explains the geometry. Claire lowers the remote. The state rests this portion on synchrony and mechanism, she says. Three independent sources saying one thing, and a technical account that tells why that one thing ended as it did. Kira releases the pen cap with a soft click. She sets it flat and covers it with her palm, as if stillness could keep the numbers from moving. Her jaw works once, twice. Her eyes flick to Ethan and back. The quiet message. Tell me, the figures can bend. The answer is the distance between two blinks. Counsel, Judge Price turns to the defense. Anything further on the technical record? Ethan keeps it spare. 2 points. Hydroplaning can coincide with throttle error. Fear sometimes presses when it should lift, and milliseconds are not memory. The recorder captures events, not intent. Claire nods once. She can live with both sentences. They do not erase the line. They only sketch where argument ends and consequence begins. A measured quiet follows. In an audio cut, it would be the room tone, the fan, a faint seat creak, enough sound to keep listeners oriented while their heads finish the math. Claire closes the binder. Nothing further, Your Honor. Judge Price steeples his fingers, then flattens his hands on the bench, feeling the weight of wood. He looks at the composite frame, the empty chairs, the defendant, the page. This court, he says even, will consider. Not a verdict, a hinge. The technician freezes the final composite on the image that has already traveled through everyone's nerves. Lane, pillar, data, stop, and now the Y mapped cleanly across it. The room exhales because nothing is decided, and because some things feel decided anyway. The cart eases back. The hum fades a notch. Kira folds her hands, testing the edges of the shape drawn around her for any give at all. The court will reconvene after a brief recess, Judge Price adds. No gavel. No need. The image does the striking. Court reconvenes to a room that has learned how to sit with consequence. Judge Price enters without flourish. His robe settles. He waits a beat that feels like a level placed on a beam. When he speaks, each syllable lands where it must. Ms. Monroe, this court has considered testimony, physical exhibits, technical findings, and the governing law of this jurisdiction, including the right to a bench trial duly waived under 7-25 ILCS 51036. A page turns. These are the findings of fact. First, you operated a motor vehicle at approximately 110 miles per hour. Second, you applied no brake in the seconds immediately preceding collision with a fixed concrete support pillar. Third, as a result, Jordan Hale, age 21, and Sienna Park, age 20, sustained fatal injuries. You sustained minor injury. The words measure. They do not dramatize. He bridges fact to law. The record contains synchronized camera footage, event data recorder analysis, site location traces, and crash mechanics explanation. It also includes prior message exchanges reflecting escalating control and conflict, and conduct the evening of the crash inconsistent with accident. He looks up, voice even. Under 720 ILCS 593, reckless homicide addresses deaths proximately caused by reckless driving. But the totality here, pre-impact pauses near the bridge approach, rapid acceleration to 110 mph, brake silence, and trajectory, supports a mental state beyond recklessness. Illinois law 720 ILCS 591A 2 recognizes first-degree murder where the defendant, without lawful justification, knows their acts create a strong probability of death or great bodily harm. Intent can be inferred from conduct. He rests both palms on the bench, the way a carpenter checks level before declaring a frame sound. Panic may freeze. Panic does not pause twice, choose velocity, and carry it unbroken into concrete. Kira blinks hard. Certainty, once effortless, has no purchase. This court finds the legal threshold for intentional vehicular homicide satisfied under 720 ILCS 591A 2. The people have met their burden beyond a reasonable doubt. Air thins by a degree. From the second row, Kira's mother, face drawn, hair pulled too tight, folds both hands over a small cross at her collarbone and grips until her knuckles blanch. Her father stares at the floor as if numbers might appear there and change their mind. No outcry. Just that quiet unravel the law is not designed to fix. Sentence. Judge Price's tone deepens. Duty, not anger. Youth does not erase agency. Emotion is not on trial, action is. Serious crimes must be met by serious consequences. He turns to the defendant. For the offense is found. The court imposes a term of 12 to 15 years in secure custody within the state's Youth Adult Transition Division with mandatory review after 10 years. Credit for time served. A breath leaves Kira like something breaking without sound. Ethan steadies her elbow, a brace, not a shield. You will participate in programs on accountability and victim impact. not to soften consequence, but so consequence is understood. Conditions regarding driving privileges upon release will be governed by statute. He faces the gallery, seeing them, not summoning them. To the Hale and Park families, the law cannot restore what was lost. It can refuse to forget it. Mrs. Park presses the half-moon bracelet to her lips. Mrs. Hale allows one tear and does not reach for it. On the far aisle, Kira's mother bows her head, shoulders shaking once. Then still, grief learning its place beside shame. Her husband places a hand between her shoulders and keeps it there, as if his palm could hold a house upright. Judge Price continues, sparing no varnish. This sentence reflects the gravity of life taken, the breach of trust, and the danger when control and ego outrun judgment. The court declines to frame this in the rhetoric of redemption. Responsibility is the first vocabulary of justice. Deterrence is the second. He lifts his eyes to Kira one last time. You believed outcomes answer to will. In this forum, outcomes answer to law. A beat. The clerk will enter judgment accordingly. He raises the gavel. Not high, not soft, and brings it down once. Clean. Exact. The room exhales. Kira lowers her head. The world that once bent for her refuses to move. Ethan murmurs something practical and human. Two deputies step forward, procedural, not theatrical. On the front row, the Hale and Park families remain anchored. No triumph, only the steadiness that comes when a name, a life, a loss have been spoken correctly into the record. Across the aisle, Kira's parents do not look at them. They look at their daughter and see a past they cannot return and a future they cannot carry for her. Nothing erupts. Nothing cheers. Weight remains weight. But now it has a statute, a finding, and a sentence attached to it. For the first time today, the room feels level again. Chain of custody is paperwork with a pulse. A clerk slides the black USB into a tamper evidence sleeve. The seal whispers shut. One master to the archive. 2 certified copies, by order of the court, to the families. Claire Mendoza signs, then hands the envelopes across the aisle herself. No bailiff as buffer, just courtesy finishing its work. At the Hale's bench, Mrs. Hale receives the envelope with both hands. Beside it, the photo that once lived over their kitchen table. Jordan in his work shirt, sawdust bright. Kira folded into their arms like a promise. The picture hasn't changed. Context has. Trust doesn't shatter. It unthreads. Mr. Hale lifts the frame, feels the weight of a tense he did not choose, and sets it down carefully, as if the wood might bruise. Across the aisle, Mr. Park tucks their envelope into a slim folder. Mrs. Park rotates the half-moon bracelet once and rests it beside the untorn concert ticket. 2 small futures keeping vigil. They do not look at Kira's parents. Kira's parents do not look at them. The space between families is careful and dignified, 2 kinds of grief keeping one another's boundaries. Down a quiet corridor, a steel door exhales. Kira steps into intake light, faceless in an institutional palette that flattens color into rules. The uniform is a shape, not a costume. She places her palm against a white wall, fingers splayed, testing whether the world still yields. It doesn't. Behind her, a caseworker reads terms meant for comprehension, not comfort. Review after 10 years, accountability and victim impact programs, restrictions, conditions. The syllables stack. None of them sound like home. That night, the Hales set the sealed copy beside the photo. "Not tonight," Mrs. Hale says. Mr. Hale nods, the way craftsmen nod when both know a beam will hold, but neither wants to test it at dusk. At the parks, the bracelet and ticket share a small dish by the door. Mr. Park writes a date on a sticky note and presses it to the envelope. Someday they may watch it together. Today, they will watch each other breathe. In the evidence room, the master copy finds its shelf. A technician scans its barcode. Claire lingers 1 beat longer than the task requires, then leaves the metal to keep its own counsel. Judges don't take cases home, but they live with echoes. In chambers, Judge Price caps his pen on the last administrative note. On his pad, a private line remains. Justice doesn't shout. It stands beside the empty chairs. He closes the folder. The room remembers the chairs. Kira learns the sound of nights that won't negotiate. Footsteps in a far hall, a latch settling. On the narrow cot, she rehearses a life that doesn't bend to her will. There is no script for this. The old script depended on rooms adjusting. These rooms don't. Outside, Riverton keeps its ordinary. Truck lights crossing the viaduct, rain thinning to mist, a pillar that outlasts stories. In 2 houses, 2 families try to sleep with envelopes on their tables and futures without handles. In a third, 2 parents fold into the same sentence from opposite ends of a couch. We didn't raise a monster. We raised a child who made a choice. Shame inches toward compassion, then retreats. Grief has many dialects. The law answered the question it could. What happened, how, and with what consequence? The other question belongs to the rest of us. What grows the belief that a wheel answers to will, that speed is a language, that control is safety until physics collects its fee. The USB is sealed. The exhibits are shelved. The docket moves on. But rooms remember. The empty chairs keep their ribbons. A city learns to hear the difference between bravado and break. When the tape goes quiet, the echo begins. In ribs, in kitchens, in corridors that don't give. It is not noise. It is a lesson trying to become habit. And when it stops, we do. The gavel falls, but the echo remains. Stories like this don't need viewers. They need witnesses. Join us in the room for the next story that must be told. Subscribe and help us keep the record straight.